Okay, today we have on my good friend James Kyle Boyd. He is a certified financial planner and wealth management advisor at Van Buren Financial. Uh, we go way back. You're one of my best friends from college. We've been roommates multiple years. You were my first roommate in college too, freshman year. We've stayed in touch ever since. Our families are close. Thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it. Um, can I turn it over to you to tell me a little bit about yourself and your current role?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on, Anthony.
Of course.
So, like you said, I was your roommate at Drexel University. That's where it all started. And I think back to that and I wonder, honestly, if we would have ever been friends if we hadn't been randomly assigned. But we are, one of my best friends from Drexel. And I still lean on you for advice and everything. And families are close, like you said. Um, like many Drexel grads, the co-op experience was really important for me. For me, it actually taught me what I didn't want to do, which was financial accounting. I knew I wanted to do something in business or finance or accounting. I didn't like corporate accounting. And then graduated in 2012, and I don't know if you had the same experience, but I felt like the job market was actually pretty tough around then. The markets weren't doing incredible at that time. And unless you had a co-op that you really liked, that next job was kind of difficult to get. I did get offered one position with Exelon and another position with JP Morgan. The position at Exelon wasn't really exactly what I wanted to do, but it offered more pay. JP Morgan, I felt was more of a good segue for the career path that I wanted to go to. So I did accept a job at the investment bank risk control division, which I honestly had no idea what that was. But essentially, it was complex financial accounting, trying to tie P&L together for like hundreds of systems across JP Morgan's book. I think I had a quarter life crisis being in that job because I just didn't want. It was hard, and I didn't want to be in an office all day. And one of my coworkers was in the United States Air Force, so we talked about it a lot. And then I eventually actually joined the United States Air Force. Went to 8.5 weeks of basic military training. Did a year at technical training in Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi, which was nicer than people would think, actually. And when I got back, I joined JP Morgan again, but this time in the private bank role as a client service associate. So essentially that was serving ultra high net worth folks, really learning how to provide like a white glove service. But I was on the service team, so ordering credit cards, taking calls from clients. But the private banker was more the client facing head honcho, if you will. And I knew that that's kind of the position I wanted to be, more so client facing. But the role did allow me to get Series 7 license, which is a gateway into a lot of opportunity in the financial space. So I leveraged that by actually a high school friend was working at what's called FS Investments, an alternative investment shop. And I knew I probably wasn't going to get to that private banking role through the service associate role. So it was time to kind of take a step elsewhere. Sometimes I feel like that gets you to the place you want to be by moving companies, unfortunately. So I didn't know what a financial wholesaler was until he kind of explained it, which was you sell products to financial advisors, which is what I am now. And you get paid pretty handsomely for it if you do it well. So that was my first foray in sales, which was scary, cold calling people. Honestly, it's a skill set that now I'm kind of numb to. I'm not afraid of anyone on the phone. I wish I had that skill set in college for different reasons. But I did that. I started as a sales associate. I worked my way up into an internal wholesaler and then won internal wholesaler of the year and then promoted to a regional advisory consultant where I had my own little territory. And then COVID hit, and it was like I'm selling a small amount of products. They don't fit for everyone. The performance, depending on the product, not so good in some cases, good in other cases. And I really thought about, is this what I want to do long term? Does this provide fulfillment? And also with wholesaling, you're traveling all the time. So what I liked most about the wholesaling gig was educating clients on finances. And I took a look at the landscape of advisors that I've worked with before, and honestly, some of them were, not that impressive, if I'm being completely honest. And I felt like I could do what they're doing and perhaps better. And so I made the jump. I cold called a financial advisor in Wilmington, who I work with now as the founder of Van Buren Financial. And I made the leap. And 4.5 years later, we've grown the business 3 times over. And I absolutely love what I do. Became a certified financial planner, like you mentioned. And most importantly, a year ago or 20 months ago, I became a father. So that's the in-depth background on me.
Love it. So now since you made the joke about us not potentially being friends, I have to call it out now. I know we
Yeah.
joked about this in the beginning.
Yeah.
One of the things I told this story at your rehearsal dinner, actually, right?
Hmm.
Where I'm glad that we didn't. You're right, because I don't know. I can't speak for you. I probably didn't go into college with the best attitude. Like born and raised in Philly and then going to a school in Philly, I had the wrong attitude probably. But I still remember when you called me and you're like, "Hey, it's your roommate Kyle." And I said, "No, you got the wrong guy. My roommate's named James." And you're like, "No, I go by Kyle." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna hate this dude." And then our friendship blossomed from there. But I know now, and I also wanted to call it out too, just in case I slip and call you Kyle, because I know, like throughout, like growing up, you went by Kyle, and then when you went into the professional world, it was probably easier to go by your first name. And now the majority of the people in your life now that you work with and your wife, everyone knows you as James. So if I slip out, that's why. But this is James Kyle Boyd. But also another thing you alluded to, like you said that you come, like we have a really good relationship. Sometimes you lean on me for advice, and I think that that goes both ways. And I always loved the relationship we had where we could talk about this stuff. Like even when we were looking at co-ops, we used to talk about strategies to negotiate for salary and what we were looking to do next. And the one thing I always respected about you was you always worked your ass off. Like you were an extremely hard worker. And I think that always came through. Like even in the things that you didn't excel in, it was always that's one of the things I respected was that you always worked harder in those things. So no matter what it was, you were going to be successful, not because this isn't a shot. It may sound like that, but maybe in one of the things, it's not because you were just naturally gifted at it. It was because you worked.
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising to me, knowing you, you're a hard worker, you're competitive, to see like you go into a field like this, especially in sales. But do you, and I'm trying to think about how to, like, you did kind of talk about it a little bit, but did you, what would you say inspired you to go into the sales field? Does it have to do with the competitive aspect of it, or does it truly have to do with the fact that you learn the things that you like and you found something truly that you enjoy doing in sales?
Yeah, I don't know if it was, I didn't lead with sales. That wasn't what brought me there. My dad showed me how to read a ticker in the Wall Street Journal since I was like 6. So I always had this like, and Wolf of Wall Street, like I always had this idea in my mind that I wanted to be in business, but
Got
you
it.
don't really know what that is when you're
Sure.
younger. I think I fell into sales because honestly, like everyone who starts off in sales, you're super nervous. You don't know what to say. You're terrified of being told no. So it just became a product, and the realization that no matter what role you're in, there's some degree of sales, right? Like you allude to how to sell yourself for a better compensation. That's all about how you're framing the conversation, what questions you're asking, which is all sales really is, right? Like there's the pushy car salesman, and then there's a consultative sales process where you go through it and you don't even feel like it's sales,
Hmm.
right? It's just asking questions and figuring things out.
No, absolutely. Okay, so you alluded to some major milestones. So I'll ask you this instead. Any challenges that you faced throughout that might surprise people, and then how you overcame them?
Challenges for me, and it's one of the things I've learned through, I guess, 12, 13 years now, is especially when you're client facing and you're pouring your heart and soul into each client interaction and putting on the best face for them and giving them the best service, sometimes you almost use up that emotional equity and you forget that your colleagues and your employees also deserve that same type of relationship and attention. And so sometimes in the business, I could get too focused on um, just the clients and being too professional, almost too professional with my employees and colleagues. And now I kind of go through the mantra of treat your employees and colleagues like they're your clients because you'll have a better relationship with them
I love
that way.
that. Yeah, I love that. Um, okay, so one thing I'm always curious about too, and I alluded to this when we were talking, was um, when you get so niche in a field or you do something for so long, it's very easy to kind of maybe take for granted is the wrong word, but the one thing that I'm always curious about is it's very easy to read a job description to see what someone is responsible for doing, but that doesn't actually tell the story of what they do and like the value that they add and how they approach things and what the strategy behind it might be. So
Yeah.
even if it's just at a high level, can you tell us about a little like maybe a typical day for you?
Sure. And if you like variety, financial advising is the place to be because literally every day looks different. But if I'm speaking at like a macro level, get in, check your emails, make sure clients haven't reached out. If there's not any immediate actionables you have to do, then for me, it's trading, putting cash to work because there are things that have priority or time sensitive relative to other things. And then it's looking at what meetings do I have coming up. I overly prepare for every single client meeting. So I know if I have an hour meeting client coming up, I'm checking every single previous meeting note with my client. I'm looking at their financial plan and e-money, and I'm trying to determine where we need to take this next. And then, there's education, staying up to date on markets. So reading, Abnormal Returns is a newsletter that I subscribe to that kind of aggregates a bunch of different news articles, and sometimes they're one-off, so that's nice. So it's trading, it's rebalancing portfolios, it's meeting with clients, following up with clients. There's a myriad of things that always pop up. Like I said, it's there's a lot of variety in what I do.
Is there anything that is there something you like the most?
I love when like I take a younger 25-year-old that is just starting out. I love building a foundational plan for them because it's like starting from scratch and you can make sure that they invest in the very most tax efficient way. So are they matching on their 401k? Okay. Do they have are they HSA eligible? Because that's the best account in the world. Yes. All right. We're maxing that out if we've got the cash flow. Then we're going to the Roth if they're eligible, or doing a backdoor Roth if they make too much money. And then we're going back to the 401k and et cetera, et cetera. So I love doing that. And then the other thing is somebody's worked their whole life. They've built up all this wealth and they're like, you know what? I don't want to pay attention to this money anymore. And I don't know how to take money out in the most tax efficient way. How do I do it? Build a withdrawal schedule that is automated, although automated to them, really we have to do work in the background. But
Sure.
um, making their life easier because they deserve it in retirement. So those are probably my two favorites.
Love it. Um, okay, so the namesake of this series is If I Knew Then. And the idea is if I knew then what I know now, would I do anything differently? Would I give myself different advice? Um, Thinking about, and it doesn't have to be retrospect. I mean, it doesn't have to be introspective. I mean, um, it doesn't have to be like I regret what I did or I would do this differently, but maybe thinking about people who potentially want to follow in your footsteps. I know you used to, I don't know if you still do, I assume you do, but I know you were a big reader. I remember you liked quotes. Is there anything in this space that either direct hindsight feedback or any quotes that you'd want to share?
Sure. When
Okay.
I made the jump from wholesaler to advisor, it was a scary time because I was getting paid decent money and you don't know what you don't know. You don't know if you'll succeed in this next career path. And I talked to a mentor, and the advice that he gave me was, what's the worst that can happen? And in a lot of situations, depending on your situation, you have multiple kids or you're later on in your career, that may look different. But for me, it was, well, if I don't do well, I won't make money, and then I might have to get another job as a wholesaler somewhere. Oh well, right? So
Hmm.
that's the worst scenario that played out in my mind. It brought me comfort to make that next step. So it's kind of take risks if you're 23 and you're just getting out of school and your choices between two firms is a startup where you can get equity but get paid $20,000 less, or a big name. What's the worst that can happen if you take the startup gig? They hit big and you're a multimillionaire by age 30. Well, that would be the plus side, but the negative side is you're out of a job in a year and you go figure it out and you maybe get that big name on your resume again. So as you're younger, you have the ability to take risk. I would say keep in the headspace of what's the worst that can happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, a couple other things is I did this as a young worker. Is I think a lot of young workers are scared to be vulnerable or seem unknowledgeable. So if they're learning a task and Anthony asks, are you familiar with buffered exchange traded funds? And you say yes, even though you're not, right? You just don't want to appear ignorant. You are slowing your growth process, right? So clarify, ask questions, be okay with being vulnerable and not knowing something, because the worst thing that could happen is you pretend you don't know, you're slow on the project, and then you won't be given, more difficult tasks down the road.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think from my side, maybe you have to do that and find balance with how you do it,
Yeah.
and make sure that you're not taking advantage of, because I would say sometimes I'm maybe too honest in that space. I'm always like, I have
That's
no
fair.
idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. Like that to me, it's not even just being vulnerable. I think it's being authentic too. Like in
Yeah.
addition to the fact that you're being honest with me that you don't know something, which is a level of vulnerability, but it also creates a level of trust that if in the future, if I give you something and you say you got it, I trust that I know that you have it, versus if something comes out in the future where it's clear that you lied, it calls into question whether or not I can fully trust you in the future. I
Yeah.
totally agree with you there. And the risk thing, I if there's anything that I'm learning from this, that's a common, no matter what your background is. I know it's easy to say like, oh, I was in a position to be able to take a risk, but I think it's all about how you look at it too, right? It's about being comfortable with the risk that you're taking, but people can find excuses to not do things all the time. The people who find excuses to do things are the people who end up being successful, I think. But it's at a small scale or large scale, I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's next? What are your future goals and aspirations?
Well, goal setting is huge for Ginevra and I. My wife, we set every year we do personal goals and then a Ginevra, which is a consolidation of our name, goals. So joint goals, like, one is, getting baby James swim lessons, right? So I've taken him to the pool a few times in South Philly. But on the business front, and the founder of my firm is acutely aware of this, so I don't mind saying, my goal is to become a partner in the firm by the end of the year. And I'm fully confident that's going to happen, although these processes can be tricky. But if that doesn't happen, I will likely hang my own shingle and start my own firm, because what's the worst that can happen,
Love it.
right?
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anything else that you want to share before you go?
um, the only other thing I was thinking about is, we know your weaknesses, know your strengths. You alluded to one of mine is I know that I'm deficient in some departments, so I'm going to work my ass off to cover up for them sometimes, right? You have always, to me, and maybe you've always had an awesome memory. Like, you bring up memories that we've shared that I've long forgotten. Um, and I've learned that, early in my career, I kind of trusted my memory too much, or thought I would remember every minute detail and task that I need to get done. Um, my advice, I guess, is, and it's something I do, is I take meticulous notes now and have a systematic process to make sure I'm getting everything done that's on my plate or is out there. So we can't all have Anthony Trepea's elephant-like memory, but so that's one thing I've definitely learned, and I've seen that across a lot of people that come into my office and try and learn under me, and they don't take notes, and I'm like, you're probably going to need to, because that's going to come back to bite you.
I, despite you giving me that compliment, I still notes are very important, which is another shameless plug for Copilot. I absolutely love AI in that space. It's saved me significantly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This conversation was awesome. I really appreciate you doing this, and I wish you continued success. Good luck with everything, and all the best to you, Ginevra, and baby James.
Thank you. Truly appreciate the invitation, Anthony.
No problem.